Amidst the old European myths, where time has left its mark, stand ancient walls. They speak softly of forgotten puzzles and hidden truths. These strongholds have stood firm against time's constant push. Each stone is a chapter of mystery, and every sound that echoes asks a question still without an answer. Here, the old tales aren't just buried. They live on in shadowy spots and empty rooms. From the deep pit of Hauska to the sad ghost of Chateau de Brissac, each castle holds stories full of darkness, secrets, and a history that's hard to grasp. They are safe places with secret paths where the sounds of old curses and quiet mentions of dark ceremonies invite those who are curious. Come closer, because the stone is ready to share its story. Take a trip through Europe's most puzzling castles, where the stones whisper secrets and shadows play between what's real and what's just a story. These buildings were much more than just strong bases. They were symbols of power wrapped in mystery, full of stories about daring searches, bad luck, and hidden secrets. Standing tall against the sky, castles were both respected and admired. They showed that in the past, building wasn't just about protection, it was about putting stories into the stone itself. When they were at their best, castles showed who had power, but inside their tall walls they held worlds of mystery, hiding stories that made it hard to tell the difference between a made-up tale and real history. Imagine knights going on adventures, hushed hallways keeping mystical secrets, and love songs turning into ghost stories. These castles weren't just built to keep people out. They were like woven pictures of what people could imagine. They got their strength from the myths and stories that happened inside them, making and keeping a sense of magic. These big forts could also become harsh prisons. Meant to keep people safe, they sometimes turned into tight, dark rooms, turning strong stone into walls that made you feel trapped. Famous dungeons, like those in the Tower of London, held everyone from queens to people who didn't agree with the ruler, their spaces filled with sadness and secrecy. The stories from these prisons are more than just about being locked up. They bring up feelings of fear and interest, every dark spot whispering about the pain and suffering that happened there. Besides walls used to keep people down or just live in, castles had puzzles built into their design. With hidden rooms and secret paths, these buildings became complicated mazes of planned mystery, made to protect people and trick enemies. Secret rooms and doors that were hard to see hinted at meetings held in secret and ways to get away. But more than just clever plans, they touched on the mystical, with stories about lost rooms that were said to have treasures or gods from long ago, echoing with the sounds of mysterious ceremonies from the past. Old stories often surround these castles with tales of curses, stories about rulers who met a bad end, or lands held by evil magic just make them more appealing. Think about the story of Fotheringhay Castle, where it was said a curse stayed and brought down any ruler who dared to visit. These dark stories weren't just silly tales. They were like guides for how to act or warnings, making people feel scared and respectful of unseen powers believed to control what would happen. In castles where you could almost hear the sounds of old ceremonies, these events sometimes whispered of ancient magic or ways to get to other worlds. Imagine Tintagel, where it was thought that old Celtic ceremonies mixed with the stories of King Arthur. These rituals added another layer of mystery, suggesting that people in mystical realms had connections. The symbols and old items found there show how unique the past was, mixing stories and reality. Like guards of old beliefs, castles stood where old ideas and the need to survive met. Beliefs about protection and keeping bad spirits away were built right into the castles themselves. Walls faced certain ways to push evil away. Ditches around the castle might have also been seen as symbolic barriers. These beliefs mixed comfort for the spirit with practical needs, making sure that stories of protection stayed alive alongside stories of how people survived. Special items were hidden inside the walls, protective symbols were put on during building, all adding to the never-ending mystery around these forts. Inside a castle, the way people of different ranks interacted created a puzzling feeling. Rich people seemed comfortable mixing with servants and soldiers, making an odd mix of classes in the big dining halls, where customs went back and forth between being followed and being ignored. In a place where the lines between social classes could get a bit fuzzy for a short time, castles told stories of loyalty that was made and then broken, adding a human touch to the cold, hard stone. In the middle of all this, The amazing ways that castles were built to defend themselves also changed to deal with dangers in a mysterious way. Buildings with many winding paths and surprises everywhere confused and amazed those who tried to attack. The smart design of hidden drains, unexpected turns, and holes in the walls used to drop things on attackers did more than just defend. They also played with the minds of those defending and those attacking. Every part of the building showed how clever its builders were, blurring the lines between what things looked like and what they did. Clever planning and just plain mystery. As time passed, castles became like containers of the past, standing strong against history's unstoppable march, each stone holding the memories of a time long ago. As the seasons and societies changed, they saw stories of love, betrayal, and bravery happening around them. Even towers that were falling apart and walls covered in ivy tell stories of battles fought and promises made, showing that a time from long ago still leaves marks you can see today. They are silent watchers, keeping the dreams and plans that turned into history as old stories came to life within them. Today, these castles still draw people who are curious and those who study history, mixing true historical facts with new ways of telling the stories. They are like guiding lights for people who look for ghosts and those who tell stories, bringing people who search and people who think to their mysterious embrace. Whether through the eyes of people exploring, historians or writers, castles give us ways to look into lives from the past, urging us to think about the mysteries built into their walls as they call to us from the pages of history and the imaginations of today. Stones whisper their stories to anyone who is willing to listen, making sure their old tales live on to keep people interested for years to come. Hidden deep inside the thick forests of the Czech Republic, Houska Castle stands as a symbol of mystery and a strange, interesting past. Unlike a normal fortress, it doesn't have things to defend itself like outer walls, kitchens, or even toilets. Instead, it looks like a puzzle made of stone that hints at reasons for being built that are more than just for war. Built in the 1200s under the orders of King Ottokar I of Bohemia, the castle's strange design suggests it wasn't meant to fight off dangers from the outside, but to keep something inside. This frightening building, with its walls facing inward, feels less like a fort for protection and more like a prison for forces you can't see, especially since its chapel is said to be built over a huge crack in the ground, thought to be a direct path to hell itself. Local old stories talk about strange, ugly creatures coming out of this deep hole before the castle closed its entrance with holy stone. These tales of flying monsters and devilish figures scaring the people in the villages added to Houska's scary feeling, connecting real fear with things that are not from this world. People in the Middle Ages, who believed strongly in old ideas and were afraid of the spiritual world, saw these dangers as real and threatening. Houska Castle shows how people in the Middle Ages desperately tried to hold back and control things from the supernatural world. It's a physical sign of how they tried to take control of the vast unknown. At the core of Houska's mystery is this famous hole, a gap in the ground believed to lead straight down to the underworld. People today might laugh, but hundreds of years ago, villagers truly believed this scary path was real. Stories from the past tell of terrifying sights, devil-like beings that climbed out from deep underground, driven by a desire to scare those who were alive. This deep fear caused the castle to be built, sealing the pit under the protecting cover of the chapel's holy ground. The idea of hellish places coming into the world of the living wasn't just made-up stories, but a belief that was deeply felt, turning Houska into a strong point of spiritual defense. Its design only adds to the story, a fortress that seems to be guarding against an enemy on the inside. While normal castles had strong defenses facing outward, Houska's thick walls and towers curve inward, as if to hold back some dark power. This choice in building goes against normal military thinking, showing perhaps more about what its builders were afraid of. People who feared not what was outside their walls, but what might start moving inside. The building becomes a container of old stories, mixing myth and stone to show how people will always struggle between being afraid and having faith. Of course, a place with such a scary reputation wouldn't be complete without its ghost stories. Quiet talks of shadowy figures and dark shapes are all over Houska's halls, with stories of seeing ghosts passed down through the years. Sounds of voices that have no body and a cold draft are often felt, believed to be the spirits who can't rest, trapped inside its stone walls. These stories, although they are made up, show a time when people believed strongly in spiritual things and were always afraid of things that were not physical. A key part of Hauska's design is the chapel, placed in a clever spot over the frightening crack, acting as a holy barrier against evil. The old paintings and sacred pictures inside show that this was a place not just for praying, but for protection. In a time when the line between what was real and what was spiritual was not clear, these holy places were like strong points against the unknown. People who came to this holy place were met not only by something left from the past, but by a place where fear was changed into faith, giving a look into what people felt when they looked for help from God against scary dangers. Throughout its long history, Hauska has had many people in charge, each one adding to its many-layered story while keeping its mysterious feeling. From noble lords to the people who look after it today, the job of keeping the castle has been passed down through the years, everyone respecting its strange history. These keepers, whether they knew it or not, became the guardians of a legacy that fought against time's never-ending movement, a sign of what people wanted to achieve, marked by the ghost-like shadow of Hauska itself. But Hauska doesn't have its tale of mystery and old beliefs all to itself. It is linked to a larger story of castles in Europe, each sharing tales of fear and magical wonder. Across the continent, castles whisper similar stories of hidden tunnels and visitors from another world, forming a network of places where old stories and reality mix together. Hauska's story is just one part of a big musical piece from the Middle Ages of shadow and light, where what you couldn't see and what you didn't know ruled supreme. To truly understand the story of Hauska Castle is to look into the minds of the people who built it, individuals shaped by strong belief and tradition. For them, the supernatural was a part of everyday life, requiring buildings that showed how strong their spiritual beliefs were. These choices show a mix of hope and being desperate as they built places full of meaning, trying to keep things balanced between the worlds they knew and the worlds they didn't. Today, Hauska Castle is like an echo of old fears, drawing modern visitors who are interested in its mysteries. It's like a time capsule showing how people thought in the Middle Ages, while also making us think about how people have always tried to figure out the unseen. As the past and present meet in this impressive building, the castle keeps drawing those who want to explore its shadowy history, a lasting monument to the stories that live inside its ancient walls. In the middle of the Loire Valley, France, Château de Brissac rises like a guard from a different time. Its 7 stories reaching high into the sky make it France's tallest chateau, a place where stone becomes a story of greatness and mystery. First built as a strong fort, the building later stopped being used for military purposes, covering itself in rich decoration and beauty. This change, however, only hit a place filled with haunting stories that turn its calm beauty into a disturbing picture made of ghost tales. Inside its grand walls is more than just a symbol of rich families. It's an echo of stories as solid as the stones that are hundreds of years old themselves. The most interesting of these stories is about the Lady in Green, a ghost-like figure whose presence weaves a chilling thread through the chateau's history. Her story, carved into the very soul of the place, refuses to disappear, like hushed talks exchanged under old-fashioned lights. An old story mixed with reality, the sad tale unfolds in the 1400s, where Charlotte de Breze's unlucky life became something out of a nightmare. Married to Jacques de Breze, Charlotte was caught in a situation of being betrayed and having a love that was forbidden, which got mixed up with the lives of the French nobles. Jacques, after finding out her secret, was taken over by a murderous rage, a fury that went too far into something terrible. The violent end that happened to Charlotte and her lover put Château de Brissac into a supernatural shadow. Her spirit, tied there by love that went wrong, is said to stay within the imposing walls. Some visitors talk about seeing things. A woman wearing a green dress that makes rustling sounds, her eyes full of a pain that time couldn't get rid of. Her presence isn't mean, but a sign of never-ending protest and quiet suffering, a bitter reminder of her terrible fate. The accounts of those who have met her, hearing sad sounds or seeing quick glimpses in surfaces that reflect form a history told by word of mouth as clear as anything written down. These haunting stories are woven into the real history of Château de Brissac, a place where facts and made-up tales walk hand in hand. Historical papers show Jacques de Brez as a very powerful person with a quick temper, which fits with the dark things said about him. But the truth about Charlotte's death is still hard to find, somewhere between old stories and official court records. This uncertainty only makes things more interesting, as history itself seems unwilling to give up all its secrets. With its old-fashioned Gothic style, Château de Brissac is a perfect setting for such ghost stories. Tall towers reach into the sky, while shadowy hallways twist and turn inside. The richness inside, with decorated rooms, artistic wall paintings, and royal halls, hides unsettling corners and paths where time seems to stop. It's a place that feels alive with the weight of its history, where the walls seem to quietly tell secrets, holding tightly to stories that haven't been told for a long time. Yet it is this mix of history and mystery that attracts people to Château de Brissac. The chateau is like a magnet for those fascinated by both its beauty and its darker stories. A sign for tourists and people looking for supernatural things alike. Its reputation for being haunted instead of pushing people away mixes with its historical charm, attracting visitors who are drawn to the promise of the strange and unexplained. The people who look after the chateau now have accepted this fame, offering tours that capture people's imaginations, keeping the stories alive while letting them change and grow through the years. Ceremonies and events to remember things make sure these old tales stay lively, letting visitors feel the weight of history in a real way. Signs and pictures show the stories, guiding visitors through a story that keeps growing while keeping its haunting feel. As night falls on the chateau and the sky becomes a dark star-filled black, you might wonder if these stories are just things people made up, or if they show unresolved histories kept alive by human curiosity. Through its stories of lost souls and spirits that stay, Château de Brissac offers more than just guesses about the supernatural. It gives a way to look into the past, to explore what it means to be human, timeless fears and desires. By listening to these ghost stories, we face our own fears, mixing the excitement of the unknown with respect for the difficult times and strong feelings that have shaped people's lives through the ages. Here, among stone and shadow, ghosts aren't just reminders of a time gone by, but active parts of the ongoing story of all of us. So the lasting appeal of Château de Brissac comes not just from its beautiful building or its famous past, but from the ghostly figures like the Lady in Green that turn it from just a historical place into a living picture of mystery. As we walk through its halls, admiring how grand it is and listening for quiet mentions of what we can't see, we find ourselves pulled into a bigger story, one in which we are both watching and taking part. In this dance of history and imagination, the chateau remains a keeper of secrets, inviting us to think about what the past could have been and how it affects the stories we have now. Leap Castle stands in the misty parts of County Offaly, Ireland. It's an old, gloomy building with stories of mystery and sadness woven into it. Known as one of the places with the most ghosts in the world, it's not just an impressive building, but a sign of violence that happened hundreds of years ago and histories that haven't been settled. Its stone walls, covered in blood, need more than just a look at their structure. They show how much fighting between families, betrayals, and killings have left their mark on its very soul. Leap Castle was much more than just a house. It was a strong fort, a tall symbol of power filled with the strange energy of its dark past. From when it was first built, the castle was full of fighting, mostly because of the infamous O'Carroll family, known for being smart and cruel. As was common for places of power in the Middle Ages, Leap showed the cruel rule of the people in charge. However, it stands out with its chilling stories of a brother killing a brother in ghost stories. Walking inside its walls, you can almost feel the spirits trapped there, showing that lives were ended too soon. Some spirits waiting for people brave enough to hear their stories again. In the center of Leap Castle is the scary-sounding Bloody Chapel, a place made famous by the terrible killing of Thaddeus O'Carroll, a priest, by his brother during a church service. A crime that pushed the violence of wanting more power to extreme levels. This act has forever put the chapel's name into a gruesome part of history, turning a holy place into a haunting symbol of how easily people can fail. Here, the air is thick with stories of seeing ghosts and spirits that can't rest, suggesting the dark parts woven into the castle's history are still there. Far below, the dungeon called the oubliette hides a terrible secret found by chance in the early 1900s. A deep hole filled with human bones stuck on wooden spikes. A horrific sign of justice in the Middle Ages, meant more to make people disappear than to make things right. This chilling find says a lot about how hard life was back then, when the need to survive often mattered more than treating people well. Each set of bones, each pale piece, whispers of stories that ended suddenly in a forgotten underground world. The terrible past of Leap naturally led to stories of hauntings and strange things happening, with visitors telling about seeing things and having eerie experiences as they walk through the dark hallways. Ghostly whispers and touches you can't see suggest a world of spirits just beyond what we can touch. A place where the supernatural feels close but just out of reach. Among these is the hard-to-see elemental spirit, a ghost said to smell like rotting flesh, an unsettling reminder that the darker parts of the past are still noticeable. For a place so full of mystery, it's not surprising to think it's connected to dark magic. Records from the Middle Ages often show castles as places where secret rituals happened, and Leap's shadowy reputation naturally made people guess that its old residents did secret magic. It's whispered that the Knights Templar might have found safety here. Rituals were done to change what would happen, and spirits were called to look beyond the world we can see. These stories stay within the castle's stone, whether they are true or just made up, suggesting that Leap might be a meeting point for different kinds of energy, both worldly and sacred. But Leap Castle is more than just a haunted fort. It's a key part of Irish old stories, a country full of tales about mythical creatures and great heroes. These stories make Leap's history richer, weaving a wide cultural picture where banshees and fairies dance among its walls, mixing great history with fairy tales. To really understand Leap, you have to see it through these lively old stories, a connection between real events and made-up pictures. Ghosts and good people both charm and terrify through time, forming a story that is still alive in the Irish mind. Like many strongholds from the Middle Ages, the castle shows a small picture of the social classes of that time, a place where rich people made plans in beautiful rooms, while servants worked in hard conditions below. This clear difference in social status, but shared fate, created a clear picture of life in the Middle Ages inside Leap's fortress walls, showing the difficult struggles and loyalties that changed often, which defined its long history. In recent years, Leap's interesting history has made it a cultural symbol, celebrating Ireland's old stories and famous past. It has changed from a symbol of fear to one of strength, drawing visitors who are eager to uncover its many-layered stories. Today, Leap holds cultural events and plays traditional Irish music, turning past chaos into a celebration of who they are and their heritage, showing how historical places can be brought back to life as living symbols. Despite how we understand things now, Leap remains a puzzle, surrounded by whispers of old tales. Its story, filled with the unexplained things from the supernatural world, resists being fully explained. Each visitor brings new ways of seeing its mysteries, making sure its history continues to interest and fascinate. Leap Castle is a sign of how power and mystery are deeply connected in history, a constant reminder of our shared past and how it still strongly affects the present. In the misty hills of the Carpathian Mountains, where shadows twist and old stones whisper stories from long ago, stands Bran Castle. It's a fortress with a history as complex as the fog that creeps through its archways. First mentioned as a fort in the 1200s, Bran Castle became well known in 1377 when the Hungarian King Louis I allowed it to be rebuilt in stone. Its important location in a mountain pass once made it a strong point against the Ottoman Empire that was moving forward, a guard watching over the border between Transylvania and Wallachia. Its building style shows these military purposes with simple defenses and narrow windows, perfect places for watchful archers. But besides its practical design, Bran Castle is captivating because it feels romantic and spooky, a place where history and made-up stories have created a strong bond. The castle's walls have seen it change owners over hundreds of years, from a safe place to hide to a home for royalty, and now as a symbol that interests people and culture. drawing many visitors who love history and fantasy. Here, where myths blend into the stone, much of the castle's fame from stories comes not from written history, but from rumors and imagination. This is the place where people quietly say the name of Vlad the Impaler. His terrible cruelty, real impalements written in history, overshadows the fact that this cruel ruler from Wallachia never actually lived at Bran Castle. The simple idea that he might have walked through its halls is enough. People's tendency to mix places and stories, especially when the stories are dark, sparks the imagination, making Bran Castle an accidental stage for Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897, made the Count famous forever, just as old stories had sealed Vlad's feared reputation. Although Stoker's story doesn't have direct connections to Bran, and his vampire character was a mix of dark legends and historical whispers, the castle found its made-up identity. Its towers, hidden in mist and stone look, became the visual sign of Dracula's home, shown in movies over and over, forever linking Bran to the vampire myth. Our fascination with Stoker's character, Dracula, who represents scary temptation, makes sure Bran Castle stays connected to that bloody charm of Gothic horror stories. Today, Bran Castle is filled with the sounds of tourists walking through, drawn by this exciting mix of history and myth. The Dracula story supports a busy local economy, where reality mixes with fantasy in a way that brings life back to the area. Vendors sell Dracula souvenirs, guides tell stories that, while they might not be true, become a part of the local culture. This back and forth between truth and tale shows how powerful stories are over our minds, starting curiosity that connects economic benefits with local traditions. However, if you look past the legends, you see a different story. In terms of building, Bran Castle is a treasure, changing through repairs and holding a mix of people's lives. From kings and queens to soldiers and peasants lost in time, the winding stairs, secret paths, and old items tell of a life beyond the vampire stories. They tell about rulers who ordered it to be made beautiful, soldiers who planned how to defend it, and peasants who kept it going. Queen Marie of Romania herself added beauty to this monument, fixing it up in a royal way that made it less sternly military. But it wouldn't be a real castle without quiet mentions of the supernatural. Here, where stone meets shadow, there are many legends of ghosts. Local people talk in hushed tones about ghostly figures, strange sounds that stay in the hallways, and unexplained things that make the stories even darker than anything made up. These stories excite the imagination, drawing a line through the ages that keeps Bran Castle wrapped in the magical mist of history and mysteries from another world. Besides the myths and stories, Bran Castle is a lasting cultural symbol, inspiring many artists, writers, and filmmakers for generations. Its look, a mix of dramatic Gothic style and the seriousness of history, continues to influence how vampires and Eastern European old stories are shown, making sure it has a place in the world of art. It's not just a building made of stone and myths, but something that encourages creativity, starting stories that bring feelings of fear and interest, weaving themselves into the rich pattern of world culture. In recent years, people who manage the castle have tried to reveal the true history, showing exhibitions that go into the castle's real past from the Middle Ages. These displays invite visitors to look beyond the Dracula legend, showing Bran as an active part of the history of the area, its stones having witnessed countless untold stories of politics and everyday lives in the Middle Ages. These efforts show the castle's wider importance in history, reminding people watching that Bran's identity is deeply based on facts, not just made-up stories. Yet as charming as the past is, protecting such a place for future generations is a big challenge, keeping its historical truth while dealing with a constant flow of excited visitors. People who work to preserve it are always trying to find a balance, honoring the past while making plans for the present. As Bran Castle continues to stand strong, may it always remind us of the thin line between made-up stories and reality, where stories last and legends take flight into the records of time. Prajama Castle in Slovenia is different from what you usually expect from a castle from the Middle Ages. Imagine, if you can, a building that seems to be half castle, half mountain, as if nature and human cleverness work together to mix stone with stone. Sitting against a tall cliff, it's not just an amazing building, it's a story of stone joining perfectly with rock, a fortress that feels like it's breathing the very air of legends. The castle was as much about clever planning as it was about brute force. Its location was a perfect spot for strategy, a great example of how smart people were in the Middle Ages. Built into the cliff, the castle used nature to help defend it, using the force of gravity against people trying to break in, one steep step at a time. Pajama didn't just sit on the landscape, it was a part of it. This teamwork with its surroundings pushed back attacks and brought up quiet talks of secret paths and famous people who lived there. A perfect stage for its most well-known resident, Arazem Luger. Meet Arazem Luger, a person as complex as the castle itself. Partly a hero, partly an outlaw, but definitely a legend in the style of a Slovenian Robin Hood. Born into a noble family, Arazem used his high position skillfully, a noble heart caring about the problems of ordinary people. Going against the powerful people of his time, he rebelled against the established way of doing things, using Pajama as his main base. In his time, going against the rules wasn't just a personal choice, it was an epic story written onto the very stones that protected him. The story of Arazem is marked by brave actions and bold escapes, most famously his stand during a siege that lasted a year. Armed not just with swords and shields, but with cleverness, Arazem used the hidden paths of Pajama Castle to make fun of those attacking him from right under their noses. His knowledge of these tunnels allowed supplies to get in without being seen, which changed how sieges were fought from a test of who could last longer to a battle of who was smarter. The end of his story was marked by someone betraying him, a cannon shot hitting him when he was vulnerable. Yet his larger-than-life story continues to live on, a symbol of rebellion and courage. The siege that held Pajama tightly is remembered for its clever mix of boldness and strength. In a classic game of cat and mouse, Arazem's sneaky moves kept his enemies away. Through secret tunnels carved into the cliffs, help reach the people defending the castle, confusing and making the forces surrounding them frustrated. These hidden corridors were more than just stone paths. They were like veins of survival, channels through which Arazem's defiance and spirit flowed. Walking these tunnels today is like stepping into a medieval riddle. They twist and turn as if they are leading you through their own story, tales hidden in the dark stone walls. Scholars think about where they came from and how far they go. These are paths that serve more than just tactical purposes. They whisper stories of what might have been kept or hidden away, secrets that are still there beneath the known history. Going through a siege leaves its marks, both real and imagined. The line between what actually happened and what is told is a blurry one. Think about the daily lives of the people inside, the limited food, the constant fear of being attacked, the urgency of quiet talks. It's a story of people's ability to keep going beyond just surviving. Pajama's siege under Arazem was a harsh reality mixed with brave actions, a testament to how determined people can be against forces that seem impossible to overcome. Outside the walls, villagers had their own story of quiet rebellion. These unsung heroes, acting under the threat of the Emperor's watch, dared to support Arazem's stand. It's a story of human strength, where loyalty and courage move through hidden paths. Without their bravery, Pajama's ability to last would have just been a hopeful story. This was a community story, just as important as the defenses found within the castle walls. As time moved forward, Pajama took on new roles. From being the home of noble families to a symbol of cultural heritage, its story was far from finished with Arazem's last stand. This change showed both that history continued and that things could be renewed. As noble families rose and fell, the castle's purpose also changed, finally becoming a symbol of culture. It became a part of the larger story of a nation's history and identity. Arazem's shadow remains, his brave actions echoed through legends and old stories. Pajama today still sends shivers, where tales of ghosts and spirits come together into a place that is haunted forever. Ghostly echoes replacing the voice of history. But beyond quiet mentions of supernatural things, there is the clear legacy of Arazem, a symbol of going against authority and the human spirit that never gives up. Through stone and story, Pajama Castle stands as a guard of Slovenia's past, a testament not only to how clever people can be, but to the never-ending fight for fairness and freedom. Located in the misty hills of Austria, Musham Castle stands as a gloomy reminder of a time in history covered in old beliefs and fear. In the 1600s, this fort became well known as the main place for the Salzburg witch trials, a dark story caused by mass panic rather than clear thinking. Inside these ancient stone walls, accusations of witchcraft were often made randomly, affecting anyone from poor farmers to respected nobles. The strange feeling in the castle still whispers tales of the fear that held its halls, a chilling reminder of how fear can lead to terrible events. Inside Musham's large, echoing rooms, those accused faced terrible trials. Torture tools were cleverly cruel, designed to get confessions without caring about the truth. Here, the desperate cries of people who were innocent and those who were guilty were woven into the very walls, a sound memory of pain. Today, visitors say they hear the ghostly whispers of sad women, their faces twisted in ghostly echoes of a time when even the bravest people were scared. This part of history shows how suspicion created unfairness and led to horror, leaving a lasting mark on the fort and those who dare to enter. Stepping inside Musham's torture chambers feels like going back in time to a grim period where sounds of suffering always echo. The tools of pain remain a chilling sign of a time ruled more by panic than by good judgment. Racks, thumbscrews, and chains silently tell stories where human dignity was less important than getting people to agree because they were scared. Visitors often say they feel a strange change in the air, as if the air itself carries the heavy feeling of those who suffered. Here, the creepy dance between the person accusing and the person accused happened like a terrible show with no promise of relief for those caught in its grasp. Witch trials at Musham were more than just legal procedures. They turned into terrible public shows that attracted people who were curious about gruesome things. These grim events were not only about making judgments, but also about putting on stark dramas that made the accusers seem more powerful and made people obey through fear. Those accused were shown off in a horrible moral play, their fates decided more like endings in a theater show than acts of justice. This mix of entertainment and keeping people down showed the dangerous line between being safe and being accused in a time when fear controlled everything. Onlookers watched these grim events with a strange lack of feeling, treating the accused as just characters in a terrible story rather than real people facing destruction. This cruel theater showed the power of the accusers, tying communities together under a shared feeling of fear and showing how rumors and hints could ruin lives. The shadow of Musham Castle was huge, blurring the lines between truth and terror, leaving a lasting mark on people's shared understanding. Even today, Musham Castle is said to be full of the restless ghosts from its terrible past. Reports of supernatural things happening suggest that the spirits of those wrongly accused still wander its ancient halls. The faint crying and ghostly figures seen walking the grounds make people wonder, are they echoes of history or just tricks of the mind? Whether they are ghosts or just stories, these tales emphasize the dark scars left on the castle walls. The supernatural stories around Musham help to keep the grim events of its past alive forever. They also show our complicated relationship with fear, highlighting how the trials were not just legal atrocities, but cultural events. While ghostly figures do stir our basic fears, they show an uncomfortable truth. History's darker parts cannot and should not be forgotten. Besides the witch trials, Musham is connected to local legends about werewolves that still exist. As farm animals were attacked by unseen predators, whispers spread of men changing into beasts when the moon was out. These stories, growing from local folklore and made stronger by not knowing things, made the castle's scary reputation even worse. The werewolf myth both added to and was a part of the mass panic about witchcraft. Amidst the fear, enemies were imagined in the shadows, showing a tendency to find monsters where there is mystery. These legends mixed made-up stories with the hard realities of the trials, showing how people have always tried to make sense of chaos by creating tales to explain things they couldn't understand. At Musham, the werewolves became symbols for the never-ending struggle between our civilized selves and our wild natures, opposing ideas woven into the land as complexly as the castle stones. The witch trials also clearly show the strict social classes of that time, where the differences between rich people and poor farmers were very clear. Accusations often targeted the lower classes, strengthening the existing power structure. Rich people, protected by their influence and money, were generally safe from such danger. Meanwhile, farmers had to deal with the worst of society's fears, their weakness used against them within the castle's shadowy areas. At Musham, the trials were used as ways to control, keeping the lower classes in line under the excuse of keeping order. This situation, where fear was used to make social classes stronger, shows the unsettling mix of power in keeping people down in society during the Middle Ages. As we wander through Musham's haunted hallways, we don't just find echoes of the past, but we also face basic truths about human nature. The sad history of Musham has inspired many storytellers, drawn to its raw portrayal of fear and foolishness. The stories of this fortress feed people's desire for dark and spooky things, fueling books and art for generations. In new versions of the stories, Musham's dark history becomes a symbol, inviting audiences to explore ideas of fear, power, and foolishness safely within fiction. Through these stories, the castle is kept alive, a symbol of how fascinated people are by things that can't be explained. But Musham Castle is not just a monument to its terrible history. Today, it is a protected place for thinking, engaging modern visitors through its mix of a terrible past and an enduring legend. Visitors can walk through its hallways, stepping into the shadows of history while facing the deep fears and unfairness of the past. The efforts to preserve the castle find a careful balance, making sure its story is kept true while attracting those who are curious and brave. Through exploring and learning, Musham today remains a living link to a time when fear cast long and scary shadows. Sitting on a hill near Darmstadt, Germany, Castle Frankenstein is more than just an old building from the Middle Ages. Built in the middle of the 1200s by Lord Conrad I von Frankenstein, it stands as a strange sign of how history, legends, and the supernatural are connected. Beneath its thick stone walls and walls with notches on top lies a mix of stories, the most famous of which is about the mysterious person Johann Conrad Dippel. Born in the castle in 1673, Dippel's life was deeply involved in strange and scientific ideas, making the lines between them unclear at a time when those lines were dangerously thin. Dippel was not just an ordinary resident of Frankenstein. He was a scientist who tried to turn things into gold and a religious thinker, very interested in the secret practice of alchemy, where changing materials into gold and trying to find the philosopher's stone were not just symbols, but serious goals. Walking through the castle's dark hallways, he is said to have done terrible experiments, trying to figure out the secrets of life and death. Here, the air smelled strongly of chemical mixtures and maybe the unease of villagers who looked up at the castle's flickering lights and whispered about disrespecting sacred things and doing magic. Stories say Dippel's experiments included bringing dead bodies back to life, and it's said that stealing from graves was a way, though not confirmed, of getting the horrible materials he needed. It is said that body parts were taken secretly from nearby graveyards at night. Whether these stories are true or just made up from old beliefs, they cast a long shadow, making Dippel seem like a dark alchemist who might have sold his soul for forbidden knowledge. In a world where science struggled with strict religious beliefs, people like Dippel were seen at the same time as pioneers and outcasts. People also guessed that Dippel was trying to find the philosopher's stone, a mythical substance that was said to grant eternal life. It was during these dark explorations that he supposedly created what became known as Dippel's oil, made from animal bones and rumored to be able to cure all diseases. Modern science doesn't believe these claims, yet the boldness of these efforts shows the spirit of a time when the desire to understand often ignored caution. Was Dippel driven by a search for knowledge or by wanting to be famous? This is still a fascinating question that echoes through the ruins. The stories about Dippel and Castle Frankenstein eventually became known in popular culture, most famously through whispers that they inspired Mary Shelley's famous book, Frankenstein. Whether Shelley was directly influenced by tales of Dippel's dark experiments is not certain, yet her book from 1818 has strong similarities in its themes to the legends that surround the castle. Both the made-up Victor Frankenstein and Dippel are characters who are struggling with creating life and the difficult moral questions that come with it. Shelley visiting Germany and the old stories she might have heard suggest an interesting, though not definite, connection. Like any lasting myth, Castle Frankenstein has its share of local old stories that only make it more mysterious. Stories of ghostly figures and strange noises continue, creating a picture of a place where the supernatural and history are linked. The stories about Dippel's ghost add to the appeal, as do reports of confusing phenomena. Mysterious lights, strange symbols carved into stone, and old items found in the surrounding fields. These tales mix entertainment with cultural history, showing the community's complex relationship with its long and famous past. In the early 1700s, there was a bigger tension between exploring science and religious beliefs. Dippel's life shows this struggle as he lived in a world changing from old mystical ideas to thinking based on reason. Society's suspicion of quick scientific progress meant that just hearing whispers of Dippel's practices was enough to firmly place him in local legend. Today, historians and people who don't believe in the supernatural debate whether these legends are true, recognizing them as a part of history's grand story, where facts and fiction often share the same page. Despite its strong past, time took its toll on Castle Frankenstein. As centuries passed, it slowly fell into ruin, taken over by nature that keeps advancing. Yet even in ruins, it captivates those who think about the untold stories hidden within its stones. Visitors and people interested in paranormal things go on modern trips to the castle, ready with cameras and curiosity, eager to capture the echoes of its famous history. The investigations, mixing the drama of ghost hunting with historical curiosity, bring new life to the legend and firmly put it in the realm of the strange and unexplained. Castle Frankenstein sits on the line between history and legend. It's a story connected to Germany's cultural heritage and the bigger picture of Gothic horror. Whether started by attempts to find gold or by made-up nightmares, the castle continues to be a symbol of how people always try to overcome nature's deepest mysteries. With each new visitor, the whispering walls share secrets that refuse to be completely figured out, leaving behind a legacy that is both haunting and captivating, a never-ending reminder of how people are always curious and often dangerously so. Imagine how exciting it is to find a hidden space tucked away in a corner of an old castle, whispering its ancient secrets to those who discover it. These secret paths and rooms you can't see, built by forgotten architects, hold stories of secrets, survival, and meetings held in private. In a time when keeping things secret was as important as fighting with a sword, these hidden safe places offered incredibly useful advantages. Cleverly hidden within the strong stone walls, they were made as ways to escape during dangerous attacks or as places for quiet meetings to plan things. Today, the very thought of finding such a space makes our imaginations work, pulling us back to a world where every small area could mean the difference between living and dying. These old corridors tell us stories about how complex life was in the Middle Ages, where keeping secrets meant having power. A noble person might slip through a hidden hallway to avoid being caught, or a secret love affair might happen within a hidden room. Each space says a lot about how brilliantly its builders designed things, who wove these secrets so smoothly into the forts they built. Even now, stories of rooms that haven't been found yet push the search for lost histories and maybe a small look into the lives that were once lived within these stone walls. Religious belief also found safety in these hidden corners. In Scottish castles, secret chapels offered a safe place during religious persecution, a place where quiet prayers and hushed hymns could rise to heaven without being bothered. These hidden holy places were not just buildings. They brought communities together through faith, giving comfort during times of great change. The chants echoing through these chapels, built in darkness, showed the struggles of that time, capturing a community trying to balance their beliefs with a world that was often against them. But besides these spiritual safe places, some hidden paths showed signs of power and being betrayed. They were like channels of secret activity, connecting rooms to dungeons or offering quiet ways out to a hidden group of trees or a forest far away. Malta's Knights Templar are said to have left marks on secret routes, creating tales of hidden tunnels that held keys to their safety. They smuggled goods, ideas, and sometimes people, quietly supporting the hidden flows of power beneath the castle floors. Yet with such power came betrayal. These paths saw secret meetings where agreements failed and plans became more complex. Here too, the echoes of wanting power and being afraid remain, reminding us of the power struggles hidden away from the castle's watchful eye. As much as these corridors kept people safe, they became ways for plotting things, stone hallways that carried the weight of unspoken truths. Sealed rooms, on the other hand, hold stories of both what was necessary and what was sad. During plagues, closing rooms quickly was often needed to trap sickness or separate those who had it. Sealing was both a physical action and a symbolic one, often forcing entire parts of life into being forgotten. Finding these buried rooms today can be like uncovering layers of sadness, fear, and sometimes even betrayal. Stones carefully placed to seal off a room might hold items from the past, things that offer a glimpse into forgotten times. These spaces, when they are opened, reveal whispers of sad events and resilience, making us rethink what we understand about those forced behind these barriers, showing a story that has been ignored for a long time and making us want to listen. Architects in the Middle Ages were masters of imagination, turning these forts into complicated masterpieces full of intrigue and survival. Their buildings showed great defensive skill while also tricking even the smartest intruders. Cleverly designed, these fortifications mixed art and usefulness, hiding things without showing what their purpose was. Every time something is found again is a nod to the architect's ability to think ahead and adapt. Each stone is a sign of skill that is centuries old. They created spaces that could trick people just as easily as they could defend, turning a simple stone castle into a living, breathing thing full of subtle mystery. Hidden libraries inside castle walls add another layer of interest. Tucked away from the eyes of those in power, they held not only religious books, but scrolls with alchemical secrets and early ideas about math. These libraries served a small group of people, starting intellectual fires in shadowed corners while dealing with a society full of rules. Discovering these collections of knowledge reveals the thirst for learning in the Middle Ages, a pursuit of understanding limited by what society didn't allow. Notes written in the margins by scholars hint at lively intellectual discussions hidden beneath the obvious drama of the time, showing new ideas and curiosity in an age ruled by old beliefs and secrets. The mysterious Templars left behind strongholds that still make people wonder with their dark secrets. Their castles, with rooms that have never been fully explored, speak of wealth and wisdom, both real and imagined. The quiet legends of Templar drawings in Malta and coded stories emphasize how complex an order so full of legends was. Their secrets, hidden for centuries, make scholars and adventurers alike interested. As we explore newly found passages, we get a glimpse into a network of influence that reached across countries, creating a story where wisdom and dedication exist alongside a relentless desire for power, always insisting on keeping a part of the mystery. In these hidden spaces, stories of the supernatural continue to exist. Hallways filled with history naturally gather the energies of their sad past, inviting tales of encounters with spirits. Unexplained sounds, chilling feelings of presence, and ghostly echoes become part of what these rooms are made of. To step into a hidden room that hasn't been disturbed by time is to feel the strange weight of forgotten stories, the stone itself warming with tales waiting patiently to be told. Chilling stories about unexplained things in these spaces are plentiful, drawing in people who believe and those who don't alike to explore. Where tales of seeing ghosts continue to interest and disturb, finding these ancient forts opens a window into how people felt in the Middle Ages, where building was a response to fear and ambition. Every discovery serves as an invitation to change how we understand their time, offering insights into how resilient and innovative people are. Every stone hides a tale, a memory of how the world in the Middle Ages dealt with things that couldn't be predicted. As these spaces echo the voices of the people who lived there in the past and remind us of the shadow of history that is always present, hidden in secret corners. The appeal of secret passages and lost rooms is more than just curiosity. It connects with our basic need to explore and wonder. In a world often defined by what we know, these creations from the Middle Ages offer a maze of mysteries that go beyond the reach of time, linking our current questions with the strong call of the past. Castles have stood for hundreds of years, their stones worn down by time but still strong, like silent guards watching over the secrets of the past. Each stone, some rough and others smooth, tells a story of its own. Imagine the countless hands that carefully place them, the hopes and fears of the builders carved into their surfaces. These stones have seen wars, peace, celebrations, and sad events. They have felt the weight of history and the passing of countless people, looking for wealth or safety. The very bases are filled with the sounds of footsteps from long ago, whispering ancient tales to those brave enough to listen. The appeal of these historical stone giants is not just how grand they are, but how mysterious they are. Every wall holds untold secrets. Every shadow hints at stories lost to time. Scholars carefully walk through them. Historians try to unlock their mysteries, and storytellers create narratives around them. In a way, castles are the physical sign of our endless human search for knowledge. The stones invite us, pulling us into a complicated journey of historical interest and wonder. Although many facts remain hidden, the chance of finding something new excites us, promising new understanding with every step deeper into their sacred halls. Castles in the Middle Ages were often more than just strong bases. They were places for supernatural events to happen, showing a time deeply rooted in old beliefs. In times when it was hard to tell the difference between what was real and what was a myth, these old buildings became the main points for ghost stories and eerie tales. Ghosts supposedly visiting the cold hallways served as warnings or symbols of bad things from the past that hadn't been resolved. Every creak and moan inside their ancient walls was thought to be caused by spirits who couldn't or wouldn't leave their mortal homes, adding a chilling feeling to their already impressive presence. The fact that these ghost stories still exist today says a lot about how fascinated we are by dark and mysterious things. People are drawn to these castles not just for their beautiful architecture or historical importance, but for the excitement of experiencing something unexplained. Visitors flock, hoping to see something from another world or to feel a chill that confirms a long-held story. This mix of historical fact and supernatural stories offers a rich and complex subject to explore. As each generation thinks about these legends, the castle's mystery only gets deeper, mixing the past and the paranormal in a strange dance of history and myth. Time doesn't spare anyone, not even the great stone castles that once showed the power and majesty of Europe in the Middle Ages. These buildings, made to withstand war and nature, now show the marks of ages. Ivy grows through cracks, taking back the stones slowly but surely. Walls that are falling apart and towers worn down by weather are a sad reminder of time's unstoppable journey. Yet even as they disappear, castles demand our respect and spark our imagination, serving as symbols of how human ambition and artistry keep going. Ruins, even though they no longer serve their original purpose, have a romantic appeal that is hard to explain. They invite us to think about how grand they were originally and the hands that built them. In their state of decay, they are not less important but changed, offering a new story that speaks of endurance and change. In recent decades, new technology has brought the study of castles back to life. While before exploring was limited to what you could see, modern scientists who study old things use advanced techniques to look deeper into these buildings than ever before. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D mapping, and even drones are used to find secrets hidden beneath layers of stone and dirt. Rooms that weren't seen before, ancient items, and forgotten paths now come to light, mixing known history with new discoveries. This new wave of studying old things confirms that castles are subjects that are always changing, constantly developing as new findings are uncovered. Every item found tells a story, painting a richer, more complicated picture of life inside those impressive walls. Besides their roles as military forts, castles served as very important community centers during the Middle Ages, acting like small examples of how society was structured. They were centers for managing things, giving out justice and trading goods. Noble people ruled from inside their walls, making decisions about right and wrong and managing the complex interactions between people who rented land and the lords. Markets were busy around the castle grounds, with people from nearby areas coming together to trade and socialize, bringing life to the stones that house them. Castles from the Middle Ages, with their impressive structures and clever designs, were amazing examples of engineering shaped by the needs of their time. Built to survive attacks and serve as powerful symbols of strength, their design combined practicality with impressive beauty. Moats, bridges that could be pulled up, and strong defensive parts were carefully built, showing the art and science of defense. The stones, carefully cut and placed, were more than just building blocks. They were essential to the castle's role as protectors of lands. These amazing engineering achievements continue to inspire awe and admiration. Throughout history, castles have been full of rich symbolism and meaning, representing more than just stone and the stuff holding it together. To many, they represented safety and strength, a strong defense against possible enemies. Yet strangely, within their fortified walls, they also showed ideas of being alone and trapped. The same boundaries that kept dangers away could easily keep those inside contained, creating a contrast between being safe and being held prisoner. Symbolically, castles have been used to represent the different levels of society, with their tall towers and grand halls showing the gap between the rich and ordinary people. In the world of old stories and legends, castles hold a place of mystery and magic. They appear in countless tales of bravery, betrayal, love, and sadness. From King Arthur's Camelot to the many made-up forts and stories about knights, castles are often shown as the setting for grand narratives, standing as silent witnesses to the brave deeds and mistakes of legendary heroes and villains alike. The stones don't just create physical space, but they also contribute to the structure of myths, tying these timeless stories to a specific place. While castles often make us think of royalty and knights, they were also homes to countless other people whose stories are not known. Within the shadows of grand halls and beneath the beauty of decorated ceilings lived servants, soldiers, artists, and workers. Their hands built the structures, took care of the grounds, and made sure the high-ranking people living there survived. The footprints of these forgotten souls are worn into the flat stones, always walking their daily paths of service and duty. Listening closely, you might hear the quiet whisper of their lives in quiet corners, their stories hidden but essential to the whole castle story. Although many old castles are in ruins, their legacy continues to affect our modern world. Their stones, once used to divide people, have become symbols of heritage and culture. These buildings now serve as museums, places for events, and tourist attractions, bridging the gap between the past and the present. By keeping their stories alive, studying their histories, and opening their doors to new audiences, we honor the lasting legacy that these castles give us, our shared human history stretching back centuries. This respect and preservation connect us more closely to our roots, adding historical context to our modern understanding. Whether bringing old stories to life through reenactments or providing a grand setting for modern celebrations, castles remain important examples of human art and survival. As we continue to learn from and preserve these stone remnants, we make sure they endure as lasting reminders of resilience, a shared cultural heritage, and the unstoppable curiosity that keeps us searching the stones for hidden secrets yet to be discovered. If you liked exploring these ancient wonders with us, please like and subscribe for more trips into the past.